Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to my impromptu off-the-cuff review of Falcon and the Winter Soldier as a whole. For the most part, if you want more in-depth specifics of certain episodes, I did first reactions to every episode in the show. So, if you want to check those out first, I'll hopefully remember to leave a link in the description for a playlist, but if not, you can find it in the play section. It's some of the most recent stuff in the Everything one, and it has its own specific one. But regardless, moving on to the show itself. I feel like I'm going to enjoy this new era of Marvel, just being able to go into more detail of the show than certain events and circumstances and character dynamics than they could have in just a single movie or a two-parter, which gets spaced out by a year and a half. But at the same time, there's some more noticeable flaws with in the show itself. Oh, that was a brain fart. No, where was I? Let's just go into a few of the good things first. Sam and Bucky, I think they have wonderful interactions throughout the show and play off each other well, and also do grow to become close friends throughout the course of the series, as opposed to just acquaintances, joined together by Steve Rogers' presence. They are quite witty with each other, with them being flexible enough to play the straight man off the other's antics, though I will say Bucky is a bit more of the straight man. They do get along famously together in this show. Now I'm just repeating myself, moving on. John Walker. He's actually a fascinating character that I've grown to become quite intrigued by, which is good, because I have a good feeling within the MCU he will get more consistent characterization than he has in previous works, just because of the nature of comics and them shuffling things about. After his first appearance, it seems like nobody really knew what to do with him, so he kind of just existed, got occasional costume revamps before returning to the default, and just was moved about from team to team, all of them getting cancelled as soon as he got there. Thank Comic Drake for that info, but yeah, he does play very well as a heel, but also a sympathetic one. At first you really do kind of hate him just because he has that smug, entitled energy to him at first, but then you get to know him a bit more and you get to empathize with him. You really do get what he is supposed to be. A well-intentioned but often misguided character. And that does bode itself well to Civilization, appearing in multiple projects, as well as, then being able to dip in and be a key figure in certain films. So yeah, that went quite well with him. I'm trying to think of how could I not mention the show stealer, Baron Zemo. Just a delight, a lot of fun in this show. Interacts well with the cast as well. He commands presence whenever he's on screen. And if I'm being honest, he's the most consistent and straightforward character in this show, having a clear set of goals, sticking to them, and to certain degrees achieving them. But then again, that has its downsides that I'll talk about later. Actually, yes, later, because for now, let's just talk about the briefer downsides to this. There are certain nitpicks I have, with there being so much more compared to a certain film, even if the ratios of certain flaws and nitpicks are the same or even improved compared to the amount you find in a film, there's just so much more than a film here, so there's going to be a lot more weak points or, continuity errors or, plot holes or just, weak. I think I already said that. But that is a trade-off, because you do get a lot more of the good stuff, and stuff that probably would be cut entirely from a film, or just mentioned in passing. You wouldn't get the full depth you do in this show. Like, well, this is an example of weak points. We'll get into that, but I forgot to mention some good stuff. Just a guy named Isaiah Bradley, if I'm recalling correctly. Stuff like that could never really exist in a film unless it was the sole focus of the film. And here it's more of a side thing. It's an emotionally impactful thing as well, Finn, but it would be like something either cut down or moved entirely just to save runtime in a film. And the TV show just allows it to be there and have a presence, which I am very glad it does. But on to some of the downsides. I would say there's like the presence of 3 big bads within this show, but only 2 are relevant within this season. One is just there to be set up for later. Countess Val, as far as I can remember. She has a longer name, but she titled Countess, named Val, that's all I can remember. She is just there to set up later stuff. That's all she's there for. I enjoyed her. I liked her presence. But like, nothing of value within this season. Just is a presence that's there. And it's only good fortune that's a presence I enjoy. Otherwise, it would be a real drag. But to each their own. I'm sure there are some people who didn't like her as much. Now, moving on to someone more important, but not the main focus, is the power broker. They are shown to be quite effective and capable within this season, as well as just kind of badass, but they don't really have the most consistent logic going about their actions, and seem to work against their own self-interest at times, as well as just not being prepared. And you question why this person, we get revealed who they are later, but they take certain actions that just don't make sense. They may have been gambles that they were hoping pay off that backfired horrendously, but like, they just don't make sense. But at the same time, they are just somewhat consistent in this person is just chasing after a bigger bone. So they're willing to lose the one they have, even if it does burn them, but that they just do it a bit too willingly. It's not a calculated thing. It's more reckless abandon, which doesn't really work for how this character is set up as, calculating, cunning, and manipulative. I mean, the series ends with them in a position of power that allows them to sell other stuff. Like, they point that out as like, oh, this is good as or better than super soldiers, which I'll get into a second why those are off the table. For the express purpose of the power broker, we all know they're going to be back as soon as any other fight has an idea for someone making more super soldiers, so... But yeah, super soldiers, they seem so useful, so good, even in comparison to like all that info and government secrets. It just doesn't work as well. What else? Where was I? Oh yeah, and on to the next one, and the main focus of this, the freedom fighters. You empathize with them to a certain extent, though they are extremists. One of the good things about this show is that, though, it points out freedom fighter and terrorist is kind of like a matter of perspective. Sure, us as an audience watching, say, Star Wars, identify with the freedom fighters that are Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Princess Leia. But anyone existing within the Empire, not contributing to any of the evils propagates, but just, living their best lives, trying to be kind to other people. In like, say, Coruscant or whatever, one of the galactic hub planets, I want to say. I know they call the Vim. God, I'm getting all my sci-fi franchises mixed up there. those people view what we call the freedom fighters, as terrorists. They're attacking their society and trying to reform it in their own image. Which, us as audience members and seeing everything that happens ain't a terrible idea, but again, it's a matter of perspective. It's something this show does very well with, the freedom fighters. Like, the ending speech that Sam gives about them, which is a bit out of place. I mean, it's good that it happens in, terms of understanding the broader situation of what happened here. It's not just, oh, beat up the terrorist, hoorah, another victory for America. Like, what conditions cause these people to act like this? Why did the people around the world support them? It goes into that, which is very good. But, we just see the extremist stuff from them. And we only get hints of the kind of actions and people, well, not hints of people willing to help them, but we do see that. But again, the actions seem to flow with the wind, the motivations and what the end goals end up being, and just how willing they are to go into extremism for no reason whatsoever. It could have been handled better as governments of the world are now united and trying to sort stuff out of the snap. And these people who are now oh, well, we came here when half the world was wiped out and we're kind of setting up lives here, but now the people who disappeared are back and we don't really have anywhere else to go back to. They could have handled better dynamics with both guys having both the governments and these freedom fighters, terrorists, you take your pick, having sympathetic moments as well as bad actions that they partake in response to the others. Eye for an eye, arm for an arm, heart for heart, continual escalation. Whereas in the show, they just kind of escalated for no reason and then are very reckless afterwards with the remainder of the super soldier serum. It's they debate whether or not to make more of themselves and retrieve the thing, when, in all honesty, they should have that debate first, then recruit people and take them to the site where the thing is and give them the shots there to move all risk. I'm keeping that in, but I'm meandering, put on the do not disturb. To remove all risks to themselves of it getting intercepted or destroyed like it is by Zemo in the show, which beautiful scene. That is him having a one-track mind and committing to it 100%. Just following through, unlike any other villain in the show. I mean, on that note, is he a villain at this stage anymore? He's kind of operating more like an anti-hero. So, I don't know. But yeah, they just escalate out of nowhere, then act recklessly, and in the end, they all just kind of die. The movement at large still exists. I hope things continue to happen with that. Because that's just a genie you can't put back in the bottle without a big continuity reset like they did in comics. Because things like this happen and then something happens for them to forget about it, or, a moving timeline means certain things, big events can happen and then kind of be forgotten about, or the impacts aren't felt as hard. It's only key specific things are cemented in people's past and other stuff just gets shuffled about. And the MCU with live action people, getting older, aging, dying, retiring from roles, they can't just wipe that away as easily. They need the hard reset. So that means they are kind of stuck feeling the repercussions of Thanos until they have said hard reset. And even then, it's this isn't a wholly fictional thing they're dealing with. What the Flag Smashers want is the fundamental endgame of Star Trek. A unified world. Maybe nations still exist, but the boundaries between them are completely dissolved. America is more just like a place on the map as opposed to its own country, but everyone's in it together, which, arguably we are anyhow, and separate nations just kind of get in the way of that, but I'll leave you to decide your own personal opinions upon that. Like, in the Marvel Universe Lodge, that's what I want, and why I think it should happen, but like within this show, like all the super serum ones are just kind of like dead by the end of it, slowly killed out through the course of the show because of their own actions, or others' actions, but what's it? Throughout the course of their own show, through their own actions or others' actions, including Carly being killed by the Bell Broker, which is like, Actually, I'll just deviate for a second. It's like, this is supposed to be super soldier serum. Advanced healing factor, tougher bodies. I don't expect them to be fully bulletproof, because I don't think Steve was either, but I expected like a bit more resilience. I thought it would take a few clips or some very special bullets to put them down, but instead it's just like 1 or 2 shots from a normal gun, and it's like, okay, that's kind of anticlimactic. Imagine if that just happened to Steve. He was just put down with a handgun. Just wouldn't feel as impactful. I'm kind of trying to keep my hands up so you can see them, and it's a bit awkward, but I'm just going to keep doing it. But then there's a few anticlimactic deaths. Basically at the end, with the last 3 or so super-powered flag smashers that got arrested, they just end up getting killed by Zemo's butler, and it just... Why? You could have just left them to rot in prison and have that thing be nothing, but you literally tied the next writer's hands by blowing them up. It's not even that great of a thing, because like Zemo eventually surrenders himself to be taken back to prison after being broken out, and says like, I'm not going to come after you anymore, Bucky. I'm not going to just like kill you for being superpowered. After, engaging with Sam for a bit and somewhat growing as a character. So it's like playing God, he probably shouldn't do, so he's not going to do that anymore. But I don't know, they are radicalized, but like, again, bad ideals as well as just like limiting story potential. And he was already in jail at that point. It's the butler that does it, and it just feels so weak. It's a shock when it happens, but like, not a good one. It's like, you're having a nice time walking with some friends, and then you hear the loudest, wettest fart you could. It's a surprise, but you're not happy with it. Like, you'll laugh a little bit, but then you gotta deal with the lingering smell, and then you're like, oh, this is a problem. And then like 5 minutes later, or in this case, another film or TV show that's still there, and you realize, oh no, something really bad happened back then. I'm only realizing it now. I love that allegory, no, metaphor. Simile? Oh god, I'm getting my words mixed up. Yeah, I just love that I went there. Ah god, off the cuff, you gotta love it. The ramble. I'm gonna have to make a few edits. Yeah, where was I? Yeah, I'm just worried about that, because like, I feel like that's something the Marvel television shows at this point that will be appearing on Disney Plus has to work on, because it's not only just making its own perpetuated shows, they're making things that are going to tie into films, and they have to kind of like coordinate and plan these things out a little bit more, and be willing to have some things that could just be red herrings or loose ends, as opposed to making sure everything is neatly tied off, because it just doesn't feel as satisfying. I'd much rather excuse me, little bit, much rather complain as a nitpick, like, oh, whatever happened to these guys? Are they just on the raft forever, never broken out by the flag smashes, despite them being a continual thing, hopefully. That's a far preferable thing than like, oh, that's anticlimactic and limits future storytelling potential. Especially because, like, if you want to, there's no point in wrapping up the super serum soldier thing. You could just say them monitored and no one's been able to make it, and the US government isn't allowed to. Because as soon as you want to introduce a new character, or character from the comics affected by it, you're going to take whatever plot contrivance you want to get that into existence. There's no point in sealing off that loose end, because you'll just unravel it again the next time you want to. That's enough of a ramble about those ones. I didn't think I had it in me, but hey, apparently I am fixated upon this. The only other thing I can think of to really mention is Wakandan presence in this, and I wonder just how greatly it was affected by the current situation, or big old inside times for people watching this down the line. And like in a month's time in America, I think they're doing really good with the vaccine rollout. Really wish I was living was doing that good. Oh boy, do I wish that. Anywho, yeah, it was somewhat limited by that circumstance, but I can also imagine it being limited by Chadwick Boseman's death and Marvel really not knowing what to do about that yet. Because, yeah, it is tragic, but also, like, it's really unfortunate. Because, like, he's appeared in 3 films. Two of them were big event films. So whether he gets recast or not is up in the air. But as it relates to this show, I think he may have originally been envisioned as the one who was point of contact with Bucky there and helping him get over his stuff. And they just kind of took the, I want to say, head of security for Wakanda, Secretary of Defense or whatever, and personal guards. Though frankly, the roles seem to overlap a little bit in those 2 departments. And had the, I'll just say chief of security because I didn't bother to look up their name before starting this. Yeah, just have her be the one that gives some guidance to Bucky in the time in America, not in America, in Wakanda. I'm so confused. I was talking about vaccine a lot, that's why I said that. Help Bucky in his time in Wakanda, but they just don't seem like the type of person who would be trained and qualified in that. But then again, who knows? Like, you could say the same argument for like, oh god, Chadwick Boseman's character. What was his name again? Prince T'Challa, I want to say. Can't remember the first name. Anywho, you could say the same thing for his character, but he's also a protagonist, so. And yeah, there's just a few awkward moments of them as well. They basically kind of come across as a bit prickish, not really respecting, rules and regulations and who has authority in certain jurisdictions. They just say, yeah, we can do whatever we want, and we're just gonna like swoop in and arrest this person without any right to do so, and then take them back to the raft. But it's like they don't really have any right to do that. It's very odd. They come off as very confrontational, and then it's like we also have this scene again where this head person is in a fight with a Bucky. Let's see. Yeah, it's okay for this to go a bit longer. It's a full review. They're in a fight with him, and it's kind of back and forth. It starts off with like, U.S. agent just, again, saying they don't have the authority and being a bit confrontational about that, and them getting into a fight. And this time to go on to like full-on murder mode, which at that point, Sam and Bucky have to step in and say, do not kill this guy for moral and practical reasons. It's just bad. And in that fight, Chief of Security just ends up using a booby trap in Bucky's arm to disable it. Probably in there during the time he was like still coming deprogramming from his Winter Soldier days, but at that point it was a reasonable safety measure not to inform him about in case he did go back under and try to hurt people, you know? But once he got better and you knew he was better, like 100% sure, you should have told him about that and taken it out. The fact that it's still there and she used it in this fight, like this rather trivial fight, is just really kind of shitty and makes me think less of her as a character. But what does it matter? For the most part, they're just kind of like afterthoughts in this, which also goes back to then Zemo. He's just kind of there for trailer stuff. I like that he's there. I had a lot of fun with him, but honestly, there was no real reason for him to be there. Like, honestly, you could have had the Power Broker reach out to Sam and Bucky and get things moving. It's fun that he was there, but he wasn't really necessary. So, like, but that is the case of like most show stealers. Like, sometimes the best things in the show, but then it's like practically, functionally, they're very arbitrary and wouldn't need to be there other than the fact that having seen the made product, you know they're bloody great. Yeah. Now, is there anything else I wanted to say before wrapping this up other than plugging those other videos again? My first impressions for all the episodes individually. Let's just rattle off my head. Sam, Bucky, they got along well. Good character growth for Sam and Bucky individually. Socio-political stuff is done very well by Sam, again, calling out what circumstances led to this. Good stuff with, like, the villains are enjoyable to watch, but, like, inconsistent in the motivations. But this is, like, the first very big plot-heavy TV show, so maybe they'll be able to improve on that with further ones. In the end, I kind of will harken back to, like, with the TV shows at least, Wave 1 or Era of 1, whatever it's called, of the Marvel films. Some of them are great, some of them, meh. Well, no, I really did like this one. I thought WandaVision was better. They just have growing pains they need to really feel out. You know, and, well, I guess, like, in comparison, the few stinker bits in this could be a stinker film in of itself. So they have growing pains to work out, and I hope they do. Overall, like, despite these nitpicks that, you know, are kind of, like, fundamental, watching it as an episode-by-episode thing, it's not as impactful. I'm just, like, reviewing this in my mind and combing over it as critically as possible. Just sitting back and watching it. It is a lot of fun, and there's not a lot I can think of as, like, you know, just, like, base entertainment that was just incredibly dull. But then again, I am somewhat political, so maybe some of that stuff would be boring for you. In which case, I think it's all right in terms of, like, espionage and then, like, superhero crime fighting throughout the first 4 episodes. But when it comes to episodes 5 and 6, those do take a dive because they kind of feel like one big long episode or movie in and of itself in relation to the 4 episodes of the TV show that just got split into 2 parts, and it feels very awkwardly done. Like, I think I said it in the standalone ones, I'll say it again here. Put those 2 together, maybe that is just how the Marvel TV shows should do it. A standard episode format that they then break for what would normally be like the last 2 episodes, maybe the last 3, and just combine them into one massive episode, the length of a movie. Because, yeah, that last one would have flown a lot better. Especially, like, on streaming platforms. If it's too long, people can pause and come back to it. It's not like being in the cinema. And in all honesty, it would have been short for a Marvel film if it was in the cinema. So I don't know why they were insisting on keeping them apart. But that is neither here nor there. Yeah, overall, final thoughts. Please, God, don't ramble for that 5 minutes, me. Focus. It's overall a very enjoyable film, but filled with a lot more films than an average Marvel film. But this is a TV show, like 3 times the runtime of a film, I think. Actually, 50 minutes piece. Almost double, actually. So yeah. Yeah, that just makes sense. A lot more... Oh god, I'm rambling. Find the lifeline. A lot more nitpicks than the standard Marvel film, but with a lot more runtime, almost double the runtime, I believe. Probably actually... Let's see, 5 hours a bit. Yep, double the runtime of the average Marvel film. And with that extra runtime comes a lot more breathing room on certain scenes, stuff that would be brushed over, not focused on as heavily. And, you know, just a lot more action, a lot more bang for your buck with this as a whole. And now that this is coming out, like after it's all streamed, you can just like binge watch it at your own delight. Personally, I think a few more should come out on like standalone things. It's good to stay on top of them. Not everything. Some things are ideal for being binged. Other stuff could use breathing room. But that is not important how I feel about Falcon and Winter Soldier. Which, again, in comparison to how I think WandaVision is great, I think this is good. It's solid. We'll have a fun time. And, like, even on the critical, analytical view, there's nothing majorly glaring. There's no massive flaws that could be pointed as, you know, objective and not just down to one's personal tastes. It's a solid show that you're most likely to enjoy, and there's nothing wrong with it if you do, in and of yourself or on the show spots. So yeah, that will be the end of this video. Anything to add on here? I do a Twitch streaming as well as a furry VTuber, so check that out. It's basically the icon I have as a channel thing. Channel icon? Yeah. Basically that character, I stream as them. Well, not character, just like persona. Because I'm not really doing like a massive character, it's just me, but with that is popular trends and also it makes me happy. So yeah, check that out, and otherwise, I think it's time for the outro. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you had a wonderful time. Be sure to like, comment, share the video about the place, and to subscribe. And also, if you're feeling exceptionally generous, take a look at my Patreon. Thank you very much for your time. Ta-ta, Wiedersehen, until we meet again.